Hey guys, I'm Coach Michael Burt, the Super Coach. Every week I come into your life to multiply your life, multiply your money, and multiply your business. And boy, do we ever love spending time with talent every single week. And today we got a very special guest on the show today, Mike Hardwick, the founder of Churchill Mortgage. We're going to talk about the vision for Churchill, his relationship with Dave Ramsey. We're going to get into all kinds of good stuff here on Super Coach every single week. We believe everybody needs a good coach in life. We appreciate you letting us be yours. Hey guys, this is Coach Michael Burt. I am so glad you joined me for Super Coach. I believe a good coach can change your life. I believe a good coach will have conversations with you don't want to have, make you do some things you don't want to do, help you become something you didn't think you could become. You see, you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. You can't reach your own potential without the help of another person helping you break through those ceilings of success. I'm Coach Michael Burt, and I'm going to find the kryptonite in your life, and I'm going to do it on this show, Super Coach. Hey guys, Coach Michael Burt, the Super Coach, coming to you every single week here at the Greatness Factory. If you haven't come and saw us at the Greatness Factory, we manufacture greatness. We believe we can take low thoughts of value and convert them to high thoughts of value. We believe everybody needs a good coach in life. And one of our core values at Michael Burt Enterprises is spending time with talent. We believe in reaching up, right? We call it the aspirational contact. And every week I'm always looking who I can spend time with. And over the past 2 years, I have been very fortunate to work with Churchill Mortgage and work with you, Mike Hardwick, the founder of Churchill.
Thank you.
So, and I would tell you guys, out of all the cultures I work with, Churchill is one of the strongest. And as I'm reading Mike Hardwick's book, we're going to get into today, Keep Chopping Wood, I could see the vision come into manifestation, right? And I was telling someone at lunch today, I said, I'm seeing the vision of people over profits. I'm seeing the culture actually play out. Almost, 20 years later?
Yeah.
And it's playing out every single day. So we've got Mike Hardwick, the founder of Churchill Mortgage, and truly an entrepreneur. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You had a fascinating life. You are a really, really strong presence, and every time I'm with Mike, he has a unique ability of making people feel like $1 million.
As do you.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. So we're going to dig into this book. If you hadn't got the book, Keep Chopping Wood, it's out there today. It's on Amazon, right?
It is.
And you're doing speaking engagements. You're doing book signings.
Doing our first book signing tomorrow night, Cool Springs Barnes & Noble. Hope that a lot of your guests will come out and join us.
And you know, it's funny that you say that. When I wrote one of my first books and it came out in the bookstores, I was telling someone, oh yeah, it'll be like a Harry Potter book signing. You know, you have these visions of 5,000 people being there, and you know, they all come.
My prayer is that we'll at least have 10 or 15 there, to be honest.
Yeah, I know it. Well, this book is a great book, and I really want to get into your life. You've lived a fascinating life. You know, your dad started a church at 18 years old.
He did.
That became one of the bigger churches in Nashville, and there's all of these interesting stories in the book. And one of the first stories you talk about is where you learned to sail, right? And it really started with your dad taking you down to Krispy Kreme donuts and buying the donuts and then taking them door to door to sell that. And that's good to learn early, right?
Yeah.
So talk about that when you first learned to sail, what your dad had you do.
Dad would wake my brother and me up on Saturday mornings, usually before the sun would rise. You know, here we were, I don't know how old we were, probably 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And he'd roll us out of bed. You know, early to bed, early to rise makes a young man healthy, wealthy, and wise, was the old saying. So boys, let's go, we got to get going. He'd load us up in the old Oldsmobile station wagon, and we lived down in Woodbine, which is today kind of a good revitalized inner city area that's really coming back strong now. But he'd load us up in the car, and we would drive down to Lafayette Street to a brand new place called Krispy Kreme Donuts. And we would load that car up with as many dozen donuts as he could cram into the car and get the 3 of us in there also. And then we would head back out to Woodbine to the church where there'd be other men and their boys that attended the church there waiting on us. And we were a huge thriving church of probably 60 or 70 people. So there might have been 2 or 3 other fathers there and their son or 2. We would divvy out the donuts and we would decide who was going to take which streets. And so Dad would take Steve and myself, and he would drive that old Oldsmobile down the center part of some of the residential streets. Steve would take one side of the street, me the other. We go door to door knocking, and he kind of taught us how to sell. He'd say, you knock on the door, when they answer, you say, good morning. My name's Mike Hardwick. My dad is Pastor Hardwick of the Woodbine Church over here on Alberta Street. He's out in that car right now. The car is full of hot Krispy Kreme donuts. We're trying to sell them to raise money to, I don't know, buy a piano, pay for an organ, pay the light bill, whatever. You know, we were just struggling church. And I'm selling them today. It's 75 cents for a dozen, or you can get 2 dozen for $1. Would you like 2 dozen? He taught us how to begin upselling at an early age. So you called me an entrepreneur a while ago. I really view myself all through the years as just a fairly good salesperson.
Yes.
That's how I learned to sell.
And that for a lot of people out there, because I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I think about starting that early, learning that skill.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that's one of the most essential skills in life, is the ability to articulate and sell?
Learning the ability to meet people.
Yes.
To not be afraid to do that, to be able to meet all kinds of people and talk, articulate yourself.
Right.
And so that was a huge benefit to me, and I agree with you. It's a great skill set that most any young person would do well to acquire.
And that, as I read the book, it comes back full circle many years later when you got into the condo conversion business. And you were going door to door, right? Letting people know that you were converting these apartments to condos.
Right.
And that, would you like to buy one, right?
Right.
And so talk about, there was an important mentor that walked into your life named Dick Freeman, right? And I'm big on, I believe everybody needs a coach in life. As I'm reading the book, I'm finding out who was coaching Mike Hardwick, who was his coaches early on in life. And a guy named Dick Freeman walked into your life, right? And talk about what you learned in that experience. And for most people, that was the first time you really started to get out and be successful with condo conversion business. So the book kind of enlightened me on what condo conversion was, you know, how you made money. Then there was a lot of money to be made in those days in that.
In those days, there really was, Michael. I've had 2 great mentors in my life. One's my father, and the other is Dick Freeman. I talk about both extensively in the book. Mr. Freeman helped me see that I could do more with my life from a business perspective than what I was doing. As I was growing up, I was blessed with a wonderful family, a lot of great aunts and uncles, and typically, as most guys, I had 2 particular uncles that were kind of my favorites. Loved them all, but these 2 were Uncle Joe on my mom's side and Uncle Jim on my dad's side. And I think they were kind of my favorite. You'll appreciate this because they were both very athletic.
Yes.
And I loved sports, still do to this day. Go Big Orange. I'm sorry, had to get that in there, Coach Jones. I'm pulling for you this Saturday. But so I loved Joe and Jimmy, and they both were bankers. They both were working for First American National Bank in Nashville. So what did I do? I went to college, got a couple of undergraduate degrees, and went right into banking at First American National Bank.
Yes.
Well, after about 6 years of being there, I met a gentleman by the name of Dick Freeman. Dick was a very well-known real estate entrepreneur here in the city. He owned 5 or 6 different real estate type companies. And eventually, after getting to know him, he convinced me to leave the bank and come work for him and start another new real estate venture called the Condominium Conversion Company. And my experience in starting new businesses through the years has been you get your own hands dirty first.
Right.
So when I started the Condo Conversion Company, I didn't know a thing about it. In fact, I remember asking Mr. Freeman, I said, why do you want to hire me? I'm not even sure I can spell the word condominium, and I certainly don't know anything about them.
Right.
And he was very kind. He said, I'll teach you how to do it. If you'll listen to me, and I believe you will, I'll teach you how to do it, and we can do well. So he instilled in me a confidence through the years to do that. But as is the case in almost every business we've ever started, it was just me initially.
Right.
I remember, I don't know how far you want me to go with this, but I remember the very first property we elected to do was down on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, little community called Goche, Mississippi. And the property was called Magnolia Oaks. 109 units.
Okay.
And I went down there and with his help, coaching me, talking to me on the phone most days and saying, do this, do that. Oh, don't do that. Trial and error. I remember hitting the streets of Pascagoula and knocking on the doors of small businesses and selling condominiums. I sold every one of them myself. I took every loan application. I processed every loan application. we did it all. And so the first 2 or 3 properties that we did, I did everything. And then when I began to hire my first and my second and my third employee through the years, I'd been there, done that. I knew what to do. So it was much easier for me to transfer that knowledge to them. And we expanded, we grew, we had a great run for a number of years.
Well, I think it's important because the young entrepreneurs out there, they look at a Mike Hardwick today that has a $5 billion mortgage company, right? And they don't remember or know that you had to leave your home city, get on an airplane, fly in there on a Sunday night, walk door to door, right? Sell people you'd never met before, try to convince them to do this, take the loan application yourself, get it across the finish line. I think people, it's that 10-year overnight success story. Is they look at people where they are today and they say, well, man, he must have had it easy and he didn't have to do all the stuff I have to do. And it was never a one-person shop, but the book really articulates those times and what you had to do.
Invaluable times.
Yes, which really built this skill set, this unique skill set, right? That would come in later in life. All right, we're talking to Mike Hardwick, the founder of Churchill Mortgage. You're on Super Coach right here on Facebook. We're going to get to your comments in just a minute. This is the book, Keep Chopping Wood, and we're going to talk about where he came up to that concept, Keep Chopping Wood. He's got a lot. If you ever go to Churchill, there's a lot of phraseology around the thing. Mike Hardwick, consistently persistent, right? Persistently consistent is one of his favorite, and he's got all of these little gems. I'm Coach Michael Bird, the Super Coach, and we come back, we're going to get into the low point of the condo conversion business because something hit you out of nowhere, right? And you weren't expecting it, and you really took a big blow because the book is about having it all, losing it all, and regaining true wealth, becoming rich in a new way, right? And so we come back, we got Mike Hardwick, the founder of Churchill. You're watching Super Coach. Hey guys, Coach Michael Bird, and I get asked all of the time, what does a good coach do? See, a good coach should engage you in a set of systematic behaviors that allows you to do something tomorrow you can't do today. They should find and fill your missing structures. They help you break through that ceiling of success that you can't break through on your own. And that, my friend, is why everybody needs a good coach in life. Check out Coach Michael Burt's Total Growth Academy at CoachBurt.com. Hey guys, welcome back to Super Coach. Every week right here at the Greatness Factory, multiplying your life and your money and your business. We like spending time with talent. You can download this on iTunes, search Super Coach, iTunes, Stitcher Republic, Google Play. We want to get that message out, and I want to say a special hello to some folks out there. Peter O'Neill, who's in our Total Growth Academy. Owen Schrock, Shane Ray, J.C. Moore. And here's a big one. We pulled in a big fish, and only Mike Hardwick could do this because I haven't been able to do it. John C. Jones, one of the top real estate agents in Rutherford County's own. Keith Mosley, he's in Tampa, Florida. Tanya Vaden, she's in Florida. Chris Phelps, Ivan, Mike Ham, that's a Churchill guy right there watching us.
Thank you, Michael.
Jorge in Arkansas, Tony Woodall, Rod Key, Leslie Denny, who was just here at the Greatness Factory, Shannon Priestley, Christy Wimberly, she's down in Clearwater, Florida. Brenda Lee Reed saying hello to us. Corey Hastings. I can't say hi to everybody. Dan Krause. He's
another great Churchill Mortgage home loan specialist.
There we go.
Thank you, Dan.
There we go. So we want to thank you guys for joining us today. I've really loved working with Mike Hardwick over the last 2 years, and we just got back from a big retreat down at Purcell Farms.
Great one.
And if you could see the culture, it's hard to describe. Don Meyer always said at David Lipscomb, you can't. It's like leadership. You can't always describe it, but you sure know what it is when you see it. And what I saw down there is we worked in the mornings, we had fun in afternoons, at night, but people walk away with a bond, right? And that's really part of this culture you've always wanted to build. People over profits, good Christian culture, do right by the customer. That's something, did you originally have that vision, or did that something that's kind of happened as it's come along?
Coach, as you know, my father and mother were ministers, pastors of a great church in Nashville. They started our church when they were 18 years old, stayed there 60 years. And so I grew up in a faith-based home and a faith-based church. I went to church every time the doors were open. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, If we had a revival meeting, you remember the old
Oh, yeah.
days when you used to
Yeah.
have revival meetings? And these revivals were supposed to last a week, and sometimes they'd go 2 or 3 weeks. Well, guess who was there every night? Not just the pastor, but his wife and his 2 boys.
That's right.
And so I was reared in that kind of
Yeah.
environment. And one thing I learned through the years is with all PKs, preachers' kids, most of them tend to either really buy in or they tend to leave and never come back.
That's right.
And I was so blessed to have really loving parents and all 4 of my grandparents that it made me love the church and appreciate the church. And so having been reared in that environment, I didn't set out to build a business necessarily with that feeling or that culture. But at the end of the day, I believe you are who you are.
Right. That's right.
Will Rogers once said, people do change, but not much.
But just a little, right?
Not much. And so our culture is one where we really do value people. We do believe in putting people over profits.
Right.
We've got a little saying at Churchill Mortgage, if we treat our employees well, then we expect that they will treat our customers well. And if they treat our customers well, then our employees will come back and treat Churchill well.
Yes.
So it's a circle.
Yes.
That's kind of the old concept of the circle of
Absolutely.
life. And so we just believe in doing things the right way, treating people well, treating them right. And it's worked to this point.
That's right.
We've been blessed.
Let's go to a point. Let's go to a pivotal point in your life, because was it 86 of the Tax Reform Act that Reagan passed, right? President Reagan.
Correct.
And this kind of hit you and Dick Freeman out of nowhere, right? And it wiped this condo conversion business out.
Right.
And so you rose quickly. You were making great money. You were out there doing your thing, and all of a sudden he calls you in the office one day, and this and the book says with the stroke of a pen, right? All of this went away. So talk about that, because it's important for the people watching us.
We had a great business going. Mr. Freeman and his family. Number one, they're wonderful people. I've been very fortunate to have them in my life all through these many years. They had 5 or 6 different kinds of real estate companies, and I may not have my numbers exactly right, but they had somewhere around 1,300 to 1,400 employees across multiple states, had thousands, I want to say 12 or 13,000 limited partners who had been investing in their real estate deals through the years. And over a course of 40 or more years, they had never had an investor lose a dime in any deal they had ever put together. That's the kind of business that they had built. And then in 1986, President Reagan signed into law the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And over the ensuing months, that law, I could go into a lot of detail, which we don't have time to do today, but that law devastated the investment real estate industry. Companies like the Freemans all across America started falling and going under. My good friend Dave Ramsey, that's when, during that era when he went bankrupt, Dave and I used to have a lot of talks. Maybe we'll chat about that later.
Yeah.
But it was a very difficult time, just to say the least. We had to shut our business down. We had to lay all of our employees off, which was very difficult. I remember meeting with every single employee one-on-one in my office, basically saying to them, I'm having to let you go. Not because you haven't done a great job, because you have, but simply because we don't have the money to keep paying you very long, and so we're going to have to let you go. Every one of those meetings were difficult, but we did it. We went through some very difficult times. I went unemployed for almost 2 years.
Gosh.
At the same time, I was working out from under a mountain of personal debt. I talk a lot about that in my book. I won't try to take a lot of time now, but it was a difficult time, no question about it.
And there was we talk a lot as a good coach will have conversations with you don't want to have, right? And there was a gentleman that came along that had that conversation with you.
Right.
That said, Mike, what your real problem is you've lost faith in God, right? And at first you were a little defensive.
I was very defensive.
and then you came back around and said he's right? Is that during that period you lose all this stuff, you kind of lose faith in God? Talk about that.
If I can interject right there.
Please do.
Number one, his name is Mike Ballard. Mike's a great friend of mine to this day. Actually, my brother and I and my son, Michael, went up to Mike Ballard's farm here a couple of weekends ago and just grilled steaks and shotguns and sat around and told tall tales, as the old saying goes. Had a great time with Mike. But that was a difficult time. And I'll confess to you that the good Lord had blessed me with an amazing amount of success over about a 6 or 7 year period of time. And I didn't handle it well. I was young. I thought I did it all myself, so to speak. And I just didn't handle it well. And so, in my personal opinion, I think the good Lord looked down at me and said, Mike, you're not handling this well. We're going to have to send you back to school for a while. And so I went through a period there where I pretty well lost everything I had. Didn't go bankrupt, but don't know how I avoided it, quite frankly. I had a lot of debt. And so for about 2 years, it was a difficult time of working out from under that mountain of debt in various ways, dealing with some real sense of failure, what many would call depression. It was a very difficult time. But Mike Ballard came along, and he was one of those guys, and you have a few in your life, I'm sure. He was one of those guys that could look me right in the eye and say something to me that if most others said it, I probably would, certainly in those days, I would have come right back out. But Mike said it, and I knew Mike cared about me. I knew we were friends. And while he said to me what he said, as you mentioned a while ago, it offended me. I didn't like it, but I couldn't get rid of that thought. That one sentence, Mike, you've lost your faith in God. And so over the course of the rest of the day and into the evening, again, I talk about it in the book, I began to realize he was right. That's exactly what had happened to me. And so I began to deal with that the proper way, as my daddy would say in church, you repent of your sins and you turn and sin no more.
Right, yeah. That's
and so we dealt with that, and we got beyond that. And after a few weeks, my creative juices started coming back. I'll tell you, when I was going through that difficult down period, one phrase I've used often, I felt like I'd had a lobotomy. I'd always been able to creatively think, to come up with ideas, to build something, start something, see it grow and bring it to fruition. And during that period of time, the dark side of that era, losing everything we had and going through depression, I lost my ability to creatively think. And so once Mike helped me see what he said to me that day, and I dealt with that, I began to creatively think again and come up with ideas. And out of that, within a few months, was the next step in my life that we talk about, the bank.
Yes, and we're going to get to that in just a second, because there's a part in the book we're going to get to a meeting that you and Dave Ramsey had. You guys are very good friends.
We are.
And you got a great business partnership with each other. And I want to take you back to the Mexican restaurant where you two were both sitting there having a good conversation with each other. I'm Coach Michael Burt, Super Coach. Come on back. We've got Mike Hardwick, the founder of Churchill Mortgage, and the author of the brand new book, Keep Chopping Wood. This is a must-read in my opinion, and it's given me some great business lessons, so I strongly encourage you to pick that up. When we come back, we're going to talk about a conversation with Mike and Dave Ramsey. Hey guys, Coach Michael Burt. Here's a question for you. Why do you need a coach? So many people don't understand why they need a coach. Well, let me ask you this question. Have you hit a ceiling in your life? You see, we're either dynamic and growing, we are plateaued and static, or we are entropic, which means we're dying. A good coach will come along at that ceiling of success and help you bust through that ceiling. New insight, new strategy, new energy. And here's the real deal. They'll hold you accountable to the good intention you have that you've been falling off the wagon. If you need a good coach, go to Coach Michael Burt's Total Growth Academy at CoachBurt.com. Sign up today. Hey guys, welcome back to Super Coach. Every week we come to you and we try to spend time with talent, create unique value for you. We believe everybody needs a good coach in life. We also love reaching up and spending time with aspirational contacts. Over the past 2 years, I've been fortunate to be a coach with Churchill Mortgage. I've loved every second of it. I've loved the culture. I've loved the people. And we've had a great energy back and forth with each other.
Have, no doubt.
Man, I'm just so proud of the progress they're making. It's a fantastic company. And I want to go to a moment in a Mexican restaurant with you and Dave Ramsey, right? And because I'm sitting there thinking about this, you guys going back and forth, right? And that was at a time where you'd both been in a bad spot.
We had both, we were down financially, emotionally, in every way. We were down.
And tell me about that conversation, because you're both trying to get your mojo back, right?
Right.
You're both good friends. You both have gone to church together with each other for years, right?
We had.
And so you're trying to think about what your next move is.
Yeah.
And so talk to the viewers about what that conversation played out like.
Dave and I were, we would get together occasionally for a quick lunch. Typically the lunch would be a Crystal or the White Castle of the day, because that's about all we could afford. Very sincerely, we would jokingly say, "I need you to pay today." But on this particular day, David was chatting with me, and he had a new idea. And his idea was to start a new talk radio show dealing with money and finance. And so he was looking for a few advertisers, a few sponsors. And I remember telling Dave at that time, he and I have laughed about this often. I said, "Dave, that's really kind of a crazy idea. I don't think that idea will work," which shows you how intuitive I was, of course. But I remember trying my best to talk him out of it, because I felt like, "Dave, you need a real job.
Yeah.
You know, you need a job that'll put McDonald's hamburgers on the table."
Yes.
And this radio job, I don't know. And so I tried to use logic with him. The first logic, he had this bankrupt radio station down, I believe it was in Manchester, Tennessee. It was a 10,000 watt station, but because they were bankrupt, didn't have any money, the radio station was only operating at half power. So the first idea I had was, Dave, you and I and our families, we live here in Nashville. And the radio station is however far away, an hour that direction, you know. And it's so weak that our wives, our children won't even get to hear us on the radio. And there's a reason why, Dave, that station is bankrupt.
Right.
It's because nobody's listening.
Yes.
So why would I put money in that? And his attitude was, "Well, Mike, number one, you like me. I'm a good guy. And you're going to support me." Dave's always myself. But he had an answer that, I want to build this radio program, and I want to practice it when nobody's listening.
Okay.
So we can do it it won't cost a lot of money.
Right.
I thought, boy, that he got me there. So I tried 3 or 4 different arguments. None of them worked. He had made up his mind, and he was not going to let go of that idea. And eventually, I agreed to become, actually, I believe, his very first sponsor.
Yes.
And Dave, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I've hung in there with you all through the years, and boy, have you done great. He's the number 2 talk radio show in America today. The only one larger is Rush Limbaugh.
Well, it's so fascinating to go back in time, to travel back in time to those conversations of you betting on him, and you saying, "Man, I believe in you, and I'm going to be your first sponsor." I mean, I just think that says a lot. And then you two have experienced such success together. And it's been just fascinating. But most people don't know that. Hey, you're trying to talk him out of this idea, but he's convicted about it, right?
He was.
And so around this time, so he goes into radio, and that takes off, right?
Well,
probably slowly.
No, honestly, it took quite some time.
Yes.
And Dave could tell you exactly, so I don't remember but I want to say it was a year or two of no return on my investment.
Yes.
I was making a big time investment of $300 or $400 a month. It's like $10 a day, $15 a day. But we just weren't getting the business off of it.
Right.
But Dave was a salesman. He kept convincing me what's getting ready to happen. Don't leave, hang in there. And then we got very fortunate. There was this little company out of, I believe, Oklahoma called Gaylord that came to Nashville, and they bought a little property called the Opryland Hotel.
Yes.
And I'm not sure exactly if the radio station came with that package or they bought the radio station too. But when Gaylord came to town, they took ownership of the little radio station. They relocated it to the lobby of the Opryland Hotel. They amped it up to 50,000 watts or whatever. Dave was on a contract, so they couldn't cut him. And so all of a sudden, Dave goes on live every day, Monday through Friday, in the lobby of the Opryland Hotel, I believe initially. And all of a sudden, people not from Manchester, but from Nashville and southern Kentucky and northern Alabama started listening, and pretty quickly Dave's message started hitting home, and people started really liking it. and our phone started ringing.
But he always had something to say.
Oh, always.
You know, when you hear me say a lot, having something to say is just as valuable as having somebody to say it to.
And he's had something to say for almost 25 years now.
That's exactly right. And a fascinating run. Okay, so talk about, around this time as well, you made a decision that you wanted to start something though, right? Is this where Franklin National Bank, is that around that time or what?
No, back in those days, we started Franklin National Bank December 1 of 1989.
Okay.
And when Dave and I had that meeting at the little Mexican restaurant, which is no longer there, the bank was going fairly well, and I had become stabilized and was somewhat back.
Right.
And so when Dave came to me, I was buying the hamburgers by that time for all of us.
Yes.
I started Churchill Mortgage in March of 1992, and Dave had that luncheon meet with me probably around the summer of 92, because he actually went on the air, I believe, August or September or October of late 92.
Okay. All right, so let's backtrack just a little bit then, and let's talk about Franklin National Bank.
All right.
Because to me, you learned a lot during this period.
We did.
You had different board of directors, investors, right? Probably a lot of strong personalities you talk about in the book.
A lot.
And you learned to maneuver and work with people, right? But you also went out and raised money. And Gordon Inman was a big player in this equation.
He was.
And there's a lot of people out there that I think when they have an idea, they think, well, it'll be hard to raise money, or it'll be, that's kind of a pipe dream. Talk a little bit about the thinking on how you went about starting a bank. Did you build it to sell it from the beginning? Was that the plan? Was it because obviously Franklin was a hot area, right?
Right.
And was it Fifth Third that came along and bought the bank?
It was.
Okay. So talk to the viewer a little bit about your thought processes of starting that bank, why you started it, going out and raising the money initially.
Okay, so I had the luncheon that day with Mike Ballard, and he did the infamous line to me, "Mike, you've lost your faith in God." That rattled my cage. I began to really focus and dwell on that. Realized that to a great extent. Okay, you know the old story about taking a frog and putting it in a pail of cold water and turn the gas oven on underneath it and slowly heat it up, and the frog won't jump out. He'll boil to death.
Right.
That's kind of what, in a sense, had happened to me. I was going to church every time the doors were open, as we talked earlier. But at the same time, I was having enormous success, and I began to lose my way spiritually. Frankly, I did. And so Mike brought me back to my, he got me centered again on the spiritual aspect of my life. And so after that happened, I began to think creatively again. It was along that time that an old friend of mine, former neighbor, and a fellow that I'd actually worked with at Franklin National Bank many years prior, Richard Harrington. Richard called me up one day, and we had lunch over at what was then called the Maryland Farms Racket Club. It's now the YMCA Maryland Farms. And he shared with me his idea of why Williamson County needed a new community bank.
Okay.
And he was looking for me to be an investor in that bank. Well, what Richard didn't know at the time was I didn't have a whole lot of money to invest, and I was looking for a job.
Right.
So I didn't tell him that, but as we're meeting that day for 2 or 3 hours, I began to think, this could be my next job.
Right.
This could be my next regular salary. Long story short, I did my own research and began to believe that this could really work. And so I went back to Richard and I said, Richard, I will invest in the bank, but I'm not a passive investor anymore. I'm an active investor, so I'm going to be involved in the bank. And I said, if you'll agree to that, I've got an idea of how we can make this happen. He said, tell me more. So Richard's background was accounting. My background was what? Selling donuts.
Selling donuts,
right? So I'm a salesman. He's a numbers cruncher. And I said, Richard, let's keep this really simple. Let's use the KISS method. What is that?
Keep it simple,
Keep
stupid.
it simple, stupid. And so I said, you take care of all the paperwork. You go get the various approvals of the OCC, the SEC, the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, those 4 regulatory authorities that we had to work with. You take care of filing the charter. You do all of that, and while you're doing that, I'll go raise the money. I thought at that time raising money would be the easy thing because I'm a salesman, and I'd sold limited partnerships. I'd sold condos by the thousands. I thought this would be a piece of cake. Boy, was I wrong. Because people had just come through the Tax Reform Act of 86 years.
Right.
Just like we all went through here a few years ago, lots of people lost lots of money.
Yes.
And so most people weren't looking to invest in anything. They were putting their money on the mattress. Mm-hmm. That was the toughest $6 million I've ever raised in my life. Mm-hmm. But we were able to do it. I went to a good friend of mine, Ed Ritchie, sold him on investing. And then I said, okay, Eddie, you've got a good friend that I vaguely know, but his name is Gordon Inman. Gordon's got a prime piece of real estate right on the square in Franklin, which would be a perfect place for the headquarters of Franklin National Bank. Mm-hmm. We went and called on Gordon. Boy, I wish we had more time because Gordon and I were talking about this the other night. You were at my event at the house. Gordon was looking at bringing a branch of another bank into Franklin, and he looked at this, and just like I did, we both smelled opportunity.
Yes.
So we brought Gordon in. Gordon ended up being the largest shareholder, chairman of the board. 13 years later, Mike, we sold that bank for the largest multiple any bank, any community bank in America has ever sold for.
Goodness.
So we were blessed. We were very fortunate. All those shareholders that begrudgingly put their money in made off like a bandit, and I can't tell you how many friends I had that said, "Why didn't you make me buy stock in that bank?" So it turned out really well.
It reminds me of the old Jim Rohn quote when he used to try to get people in the business. He said, "You're going to say no, but I'm going to tell you right now so you don't come back later and get mad at me."
Yeah.
All right, guys, we've got Mike Hardwick here, the founder of Churchill Mortgage, and has been a part of many, many wonderful things. That was Franklin National Bank, and I just admire him for having the confidence and the courage to take those steps early in life, and for all the people out here watching this that have dreams, but they're limited because they don't think they can pull that off. I think that's big, right?
Well, I think it all started with my dad and my mother starting a church from
18
scratch.
years old.
Yeah, and worked there. They worked full-time public jobs for probably 10 to 15 years, not being able to draw a salary of this little fledgling church, but that was their heart. They had that calling, as we used to refer to it that way, and so they never gave up, they never quit. They kept chopping wood. They were persistently consistent. They stayed positive, and 20, 30, 40 years later, they were an overnight success.
I love it. 18 years old, and you said this at your event the other night. How many people would, if a person started a church today at 18 years old, how many people would get in those doors? So that's just an amazing story. We come back in the final segment. We're going to get into Churchill Mortgage, the vision for that over the last 20 years of building that company into a $5 billion mortgage company, and just a good-centered company. And we're going to talk about Mike's vision for that and how they've maintained and built that culture. You're watching Super Coach, and I'm Coach Michael Burke. Hey guys, Coach Michael Burt. How do you find the right coach for you? There's personal coaches, there's life coaches, there's business coaches, there's spiritual coaches. Here's the deal. You got to find a coach you have an affinity with. You believe the same things. I believe trained people always outperform untrained people. I believe coach people always outperform uncoached people. You got to find a coach that you think brings the knowledge and the skill and the desire and the confidence to you that will work for you. I would love to be that coach through my new Total Growth Academy. Go to CoachBurt.com, click on virtual coaching, and get coached by me every day on any device, anywhere on planet Earth. All right, welcome back, Super Coach. Every week we come into your life to multiply life, money, and business. We believe everybody needs a good coach in life. I appreciate all the people who download the show on Super Coach on iTunes. And if you're not in my Total Growth Academy, we've had people signing up for that all week. You can get coached by me anytime, anywhere, on any device, and get all the coaching you want, over 400 coaching sessions. That's as low as $99 a month. And we appreciate everybody that believes that. We've got Mike Hardwick here with us today, the founder of Churchill. That's a $2 billion mortgage company, right?
$2 billion. I want to correct that.
He corrected me on that.
Our goal is $5 billion.
Okay.
And we hope to be there.
But here's what I said. It's still got to be behind it. Okay. It's still got to be behind it, right? So we've been talking about your story, your life. You started selling Krispy Kremes. You raised by parents who instilled this in you. And I'm going to tell you one of the most touching stories of this book. And I ended my presentation yesterday in Nashville. I spoke to 500 leaders at Trevecca, all state of Tennessee employees, all of the big leaders, the commissioners, everybody. And I ended my talk with the story about your mother writing a list of potential good fit wives for your father.
Right.
And what a touching story. If you read my email that went out today, all of your Churchill people would have got it. When I read that, I thought, man, that was phenomenal. So tell that story, because I think that's very powerful.
My mother was an amazing woman. By the way, Trevecca, my wife Stephanie, beautiful, the most wonderful things ever happened to me. Probably, certainly that my children. But she went to Trevecca and graduated. So Trevecca's a great school. Mother, about a year to a year and a half before she passed away, she was talking to me one day, and I really believe she, in some sense, she probably had a premonition that she didn't have long to live.
Right.
She was actually in reasonably good health at that time, but she was talking to me, and she said, son, you know your dad, when we got married, he was 18 years old. Mom said I was 19, Dad was 18. And she said, so all he's ever known his entire life has been his mother, my grandmother, and my mother. And she said, if I precede him in death, he will not do well alone. He will need to remarry. And she said, so I want you to know that I'm okay with that, that I think that would be a good thing, and your dad would need it. And I looked at her and said, wow, Mom, that's great, but why are we talking about that? Because you got a long life to live.
Right.
Well, fast forward a year to a year and a half later, and she had passed away. But the funny part of the story is I went on to share this story in church one Sunday a few years ago. I stood up in front of the congregation. There were thousands there. I told that story, and I looked down the front row at Dad's wife, Carol, and I said, Carol, we love you. You've been a godsend to my father and our family, and I want you to know that Mom foresaw this in some fashion. She actually that day, when she told me that story and encouraged us to be okay with it, she said, in fact, not only am I all right with that, here is a list of 5 ladies I'd be all right with. And she gave me actually a list of 5 names. 4 of the ladies were there in our church, and one lived in a different part of the country. So I shared that story that Sunday, and I said to Carol, who was sitting in the front row, I said, Carol, you'd be happy to know you were number 1 on Mom's list. Well, of course, the congregation gave her a rousing ovation. We all love Carol. And then when they finally settled down, I said, how many of you would like to hear who the other 4 were? And they all went crazy. And I said, well, we'll save that for another service and put it away. But Mom picked Carol in a sense, and she's been a godsend.
What a powerful story, though. And I wrote in the email, we sent that email out to about 10,000 plus people.
Wow.
And it went out this morning. And I put in there that what a selfless act on your mother's part. Well, we had all kinds of emails of people emailing me back and thank you for this email and so impactful. And one person says she wasn't being selfless, she was being selfish because she wanted the best for her husband.
That's
and
good.
I said, now that's good, right?
That is good.
But what a power! And this book is packed with stories that will touch you, not just from a business perspective, but the spiritual perspective, from an emotional perspective. There's all kinds of stories in there that really touch a person's, the body, the mind, the heart, the spirit of a person, and I appreciate that. It's not all just straight business lessons, although there's lots of business lessons, but there's also personal stories of your life and the ups and downs and the good and the bad and things like that.
I read I started to say a really good book. It was good for me at the time. Probably 25 years ago. And the title of the book, you can probably still get it on Amazon or somewhere. It's called Your Work Matters to God.
Ah, that's great.
That book had a tremendous impact on me. And one of the things that book kind of covered were, as the author of that book said, you could kind of divide your life into 5 primary areas. Your personal life, your family life, your business life, your spiritual life, and your community life. And he helped you understand the high importance of making sure you were living fully in all those 5 areas. So the spiritual life is a key component of a happy and contented life, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And work could really be, in a lot of ways, a discipleship lab. You know, the amount of impact. I mean, think about what your home loan specialists are doing every day, counseling people, and with the mission of debt-free home ownership.
Right.
You know, and all the things they're doing.
Having the heart of a teacher.
Having the heart of a teacher. All of your values. So let's talk about that. Let's finish with that today about Churchill Mortgage, where it is today, because it's come a long way, right?
A long way.
And in every way,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
it is now a real powerhouse. You got a great culture. You got a great company. You got great people. You got a great leader in Matt Clark, who I've loved working with.
The best.
Phenomenal person that really gets the concept of leadership and culture. So talk about the evolution of Churchill. Maybe some of the downs, some of the ups, what you've learned along the way, the plateaus and the ceilings that you've busted through, so that person can really get a good grasp of that.
You know, there are some people, Coach, I believe, that are true visionaries. They have the ability to, in their mind, see something 5 and 10 and 20 years out that is not today. And they have the expertise to know the steps you need to take to get there. I'm not one of those people. I wish I were, but I'm not. I'm kind of the guy that says, okay, let's take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. So when I started Churchill Mortgage, quite frankly, the bank was up and going and doing well, and I was kind of tired of managing people. You know, there are a lot of things that are wonderful and great about managing people, but it's difficult.
Yes.
It's tough. And so I was kind of tired of doing that. I thought, you know what, I'm going to stay on the board at the bank. I was the third largest shareholder in the bank at that time. I thought I'll keep my stock, I'll stay on the board, and I'm going to just open up a little mortgage brokerage shop. It'll be just me. I'll hire one other person to kind of open up every morning, close every night, turn the lights on and off, answer the phones, and it'll just be me. I won't have to manage people. I can just go out and sell, and I'll do great. Well, about 8 months later, I had 8 employees, and you know, I despite myself, it just started growing. And we were very fortunate to be in a powerful mortgage economy. Rates were dropping and going down. They continually went down and down. And so before I knew it, I woke up 20 some odd years later. We're in 38 states now. We've got hundreds of employees. We'll do close to between 1.5 and 2 billion in volume this year. So, but I got there not because of any great vision, but just because I was persistently consistent. I really buy into the idea of having daily disciplines, of just chopping wood every day so that when the winter comes, you'll be warm.
Yes.
You'll be able to eat.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we've done it, quite frankly. You know, I'm a salesperson. By my nature, I'm a positive thinking person.
Yes.
And so I buy into attitude is everything. John Maxwell says that's not totally true. He says attitude with action is everything. And certainly he's correct. But just having the proper attitude, getting up every day, whether it's raining or sunny, and taking care of business, and then go play. I've taught that to my children, and
yes,
that's what I believe.
And many of, almost all your children are in the business.
2 of my 3 are actively in the business. The third one, my oldest one, is in our Churchill Foundation that we started a few years ago, and we're doing a lot of good things with that. And then my youngest one is 16 years old, a sophomore at Brentwood Academy, and once we get him through BA and through college, we'll see where he goes. But
and the Churchill, a lot of people don't know this, but you founded that because you had a deep respect for Winston Churchill.
I did. 2 historical figures that I've always thought highly of, and I've read countless books on, and I've been a big fan of, are Ronald Reagan and Winston Churchill. And so when we looked at starting the little mortgage operation, I was trying to come up with a name, and I thought Hardwick Mortgage. That just doesn't have the ring that I want to have. And then I thought Reagan Mortgage. Well, that sounded good to me, but then I thought, okay, half of the city won't do business with me when they find out that I like Ronald Reagan. Right. And then, so then I landed on Churchill Mortgage, probably one of the smartest decisions I've ever fallen into in my life. It's a great name because of a great man.
Well, give the viewer, as we wind this thing down, I could go on for hours and hours and hours with you, because I have a lot of respect for you and what you've done and accomplished. You've been a great, even a mentor to me in a lot of ways by me reading your material and working with your company. But give the viewer out there just some positive message on this keep chopping wood concept. I remember Phil Jackson used to say, every day we chop wood and every day we carry water. And my phrase was always, there comes a time when winter asks what you did all spring and summer.
It always comes.
And that was old basketball phrase, because I always said we won championships in the off-season.
You know, in our business, the mortgage business is somewhat cyclical, meaning more homes are sold in the spring and summer than typically are in December, January. And so we coach the sales side, the production side of our business so often. I was getting on the elevator a couple of days ago, and two of my female salespeople were getting on the elevator with me, and we rode down, and I was saying, as I always do, how's your month? How are you doing? And they said, well, we're having great months, but just a little bit down. You know, our call counts are a little bit down. And I said, you know, let me tell you something. It's funny. I've been in this business now 25 years. 25 years. And there's an interesting phenomena that I've noticed. Every one of those 25 years, without exception, has had a November and a December and a January and a February.
Yes.
Isn't that funny? Every one of those 25 years has had those 4 months.
Right.
Every one of those 25 years, without exception, has had a Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. Every one of those years has had some snow and ice. Every one of those years has had shorter days, darker days, you know, time changes.
Right.
It's just interesting. I've observed that. And so I laughed and I said, you know, it's what you did last March and April and May and June and July and August that's going to determine what your November, December, January, February looks like. Right. And so we've kind of ordered our business and our life around that basic concept that every day, my dad always taught us, boys, if it's raining today, that increases the odds it may be a little sunny tomorrow. If it's sunny today, odds are it's increased odds it'll be rainy tomorrow. Either way, get up and go. Work, take care of your obligations, have those daily disciplines. Keep chopping wood every day. And as you say, when winter comes, you'll have food to eat, you'll have a warm fire to get around. Yes. So that's just how we've operated through the years, and it's worked for us.
I love it. I love it. Well, Mike, thank you for coming over to the Greatness Factory today. Thank you for believing in me and letting me be one of the coaches with your company. And thank you for this gem right here. If you haven't gotten it, guys, I'm telling you, this is a great book. This is at the top of the reading list of what I'm reading right now. And man, I've got notes and I've got highlights. If you just go in here and you look at it, I've highlighted things. I've made notes in different parts of the book, because there's so many lessons in here, guys, for your life and for your success.
And before you cut off, let me say to those that are watching today, this guy, to put it in the old sports vernacular, he's legit. He's been working with my company now for roughly 2 years. And he is a difference maker of the highest order. He has made a huge difference in so many people individually in our company that you're coaching. I had lunch with him today and encouraged him to stay with it and keep learning, keep growing. But Coach Bird is a true difference maker. If you're remotely considering taking advantage of his coaching, don't delay. You'll be glad you did.
Thank you. That means a lot. It means a lot coming from you. So thank you for coming over to the Greatness Factory. Get the book, Keep Chopping Wood. Trust me, it'll be a true pleasure for you to read this book. And I look forward to continued success, because there's a lot more coming.
As my daddy taught us in church, amen.
Amen. All right, guys, thank you for watching Super Coach. Every week we multiply your life, your money, and your business. Come see us at the Greatness Factory. I'm teaching Monster Producer tomorrow. We'll have some of the top entrepreneurs and business builders in the country in this room or online, and you get access. Go to CoachBurt.com. And we believe everybody needs a good coach in life. We appreciate you letting us be yours. Hey guys, Coach Michael Bird, and I get asked all of the time, what does a good coach do? See, a good coach should engage you in a set of systematic behaviors that allows you to do something tomorrow you can't do today. They should find and fill your missing structures. They help you break through that ceiling of success that you can't break through on your own. And that, my friend, is why everybody needs a good coach in life. Check out Coach Michael Burt's Total Growth Academy at CoachBurt.com.